Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX agency. Check us out. And welcome to our Tuesday office hours. It's usually Ask Me Anything, but today it is Ask Us Anything with our special guests, Darren and Dr. Nick, who'll be joining us in just a moment. I need to tell people a couple of show notes. First of all, I'm going to need to move a lot of the scheduled shows for the next 2 months. So if you are watching this in late 2021 from October 12th through the end of the year, please check deltacx.link/events before tuning in, because I'm going to have to move many of our live shows coming up. Some of you heard that I got a new contract job, which I'm very excited about and proud of. But they are in New York, and they're looking for me to be as available to them as possible during New York time. And all these shows run right through the New York day. So I'm going to be moving a lot of shows later in the year, and also to Fridays, since interestingly, they do a 4-day work week. So you will see weird things happening on weird days, like office hours move to Friday and shows move to Friday. So please check in on events before tuning in. For those of you diehard fans who tune in without even looking, you're going to want to look first. And of course, you can also please subscribe to YouTube and ring that bell so that you will know when we're live, because it might be a little bit of a strange time here for the rest of 2021. Hi to Denise. Thank you, Denise. So let me bring in our guests, and then we can start answering your questions, and we'll be here for a little while. So let's press the button. Okay, we should have Darren Hood and Dr. Nick Fine, our usual special guests this time of the month. Though next month we're gonna have to move it to a Friday. So let's introduce ourselves. Darren, who the heck are you?
Hi, everybody. My name is Darren Hood. I am a 26 plus year experienced designer. Absolutely love the design, love helping everybody that I can, pressing on in spite of. That's the name of the game right now for me. A lot of obstacles, but we continue to go forward. That's it.
Darren seems kind of blippy. Nick, did that come out blippy to you?
Blippy. I'm looking at my own frozen image up there, so I think there's definitely some connectivity. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I do hear you. I'm checking my internet and it's looking good. Hi, I-10. Are we all blipping, or is it just the guys? I'm going to maybe drop people's video bandwidth a little bit, since I've learned how to do that in my tool. And let's see, remote guest video bandwidth. Anyway, Nick, now you please introduce yourself while I drop your video bandwidth a bit.
Hi, I'm Nick. I'm a psychologist who does HCI, who does UX. I've been practicing for about 11 years now, and in academia, in digital and new media as it was for the past 20 or 30 years. I predate the internet computing itself, kind of thing. So that's me kind of in a nutshell, really. Again, very much like Darren, I just very much want to ensure that the direction of our market, of our practice, is in a consistent trajectory with the one that we've been on, and not some crazy graphic design one.
I feel ya. And thanks to Aitan and Stephanie in the chat room. And remember, everybody, we are taking everybody's questions for the next roughly 2 hours. I've got a new way to put questions up on the screen, though they're going to slightly block Dr. Nick. Sorry about this, but I think it's going to help everybody. Let's try it out. And if I have to, other way. Yeah, it's going to be other way, Nick. So here we go. I figure this is going to help everybody see the whole question. And here we go. So hopefully you can read this. And it says, "Hi, Darren, Nick, and Debbie. I don't remember when and where, but Darren once said, a UX researcher's job is not to research everything. It's to understand what to research and when. My question is related to this: how to build effective research strategy if you keep getting different research requests from product managers and lead designers. If there are so many key voices, how do you choose which one to listen to and how to ignore others? Okay, do you guys have this? Because then I can take the question down and not block Dr. Nick's lovely punim. Darren, this is someone's quoting you. Do you want to start?
The gist of it.
Yeah. Am I still blipping?
You're very blipping.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm gonna go out and come back in.
Okay. The audience said that just the gents were blipping and I seem okay, which makes me think my bandwidth is okay. I'm also watching my bandwidth. I have a whole live bandwidth meter on my computer because I'm always afraid it's me. But Nick, do you have an answer to that question?
Sure. It's a great question from what I could understand of it. I think you're asking about research priority and what do I look at first, because everybody's asking me to look at stuff. What do I do first? It's a great question, but it's so very, very project dependent. I mean, I know, Debbie, one of our favorite sayings here is "it depends," and unfortunately, this is a very much it depends question. Oh wow, cool! We've new graphics. Yeah, it depends, and I know that sucks. It's a sitting on the fence sort of answer. The bottom line is this: it depends where you are in the kind of the project or service life cycle, if you know what I mean. Ideally, you're agile and you're doing research every sprint, in which case, but in terms of the kind of the funnel of information, if you know what I mean, ideally you need to get all the background discovery type stuff about the context and the basic user needs and all that kind of stuff. And you end up zooming into, can you find the call to action? And there's everything in between those two research questions and research perspectives. One is discovery, one is user testing, but there's a lot of different merging of those things all the way through this, or every sprint if you're doing it that way. How do you prioritize? If you've got the wide stuff, then go down the funnel to the more refined stuff. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you have to go with who's kind of shouting loudest with the most authority. A terrible answer. But if it's your product manager, you listen to your product manager. I mean, they carry authority, and they carry authority over you as a user researcher. That's not a thing, it's just I love it when I'm getting good direction from my product manager. So ideally, this is kind of their issue because it's their roadmap. I understand there are times when you have a product person who isn't as, let's say, engaging or is so, in which case it's up to you to manage your time. Think of it in terms of product person roadmap, effort over value and all of that sort of stuff. We're researchers. We're part of a product team. Your research activity has to directly relate to the product team and what they're trying to deliver and who's next in the flow, which is obviously usually an interaction designer or somebody of that ilk. So that's why there's so many it depends. I could sit here and rattle off reasons why it's different all the way through, but I hope that's given you a bit of a flavor as to the issues, the considerations in looking at all of these various issues. But the bottom line is, I think, put it to the product person, because really, if it's a really lovely agile running machine, every sprint or every sprint planning, the product person is saying to you, okay, Mr. or Ms. User Researcher, now we're doing this, and that makes your life much easier. That's it from me in a nutshell.
Thank you. Darren, something to add? And do you need me to put the question back up?
Let's see. No, I don't think so. Can you hear me okay right now?
We do.
Lovely, clean.
Awesome. Okay. Well, excuse me. The thing that comes to my mind first is trying to remember as much as I can about the statement, and just remembering the concept in general, is that always needing to remember. I missed part of Dr. Nick's answer, so if I'm redundant, excuse that. And if I am, it's a good thing anyway. But we're not order takers. And even when it comes to research, people will come to us with something they want us to research. And if you just take that baton and run with it, you're doing your clients a disservice. You're doing the discipline a service. You're misrepresenting yourself. You're misrepresenting your value. It's important for all UXers, no matter what part of UX a person is functioning in. It's important for us to understand what people are really trying to address. We don't just take the order. We're not waiters. We don't just take the order and then we run off and we do something. We need to validate it. And a lot of times, if we have the proper level of expertise and we take the time to validate what's being presented to us, a lot of times we can find something that can accentuate, it can help optimize, or help to address things that maybe the client had not even identified. So we don't want to be in a position where we're just taking the order. When we apply that critical thinking, we can fine tune what that research initiative is going to be. And then we can, if everything checks out, then we can go and we can engage in research the proper way and not be, as I'm starting to call it now, UX hamsters. We don't want to be people that are in a wheel patting ourselves on the back because we're doing something when the truth is we're not going anywhere. We're just active, just doing something, stumbling, running around in circles, doing what? Addressing what? Solving what issues? So that's the thing we have to remember. We always want to make sure we're bringing value. And if we take what somebody brings to us at face value and we don't vet that thing out and validate it and examine it, we're selling ourselves short.
All right, let me add something to that, and then we have a follow-up question from Iton. So looking back at this question, when I see this question about, oh, you're getting all these different research requests from product managers and other designers, how do you know who to listen to and how to ignore? My thought is you're probably thinking, who do I listen to and who do I ignore, because you have no bandwidth. You have more requests than you have time for. If you had if it was equal or fewer and you had the time, you would just do everybody's requests. You would have time for this person's research and this person's testing. But when you're asking who do you ignore, I don't know if you're saying because people are making frivolous requests, which they might not be, or because you're just stretched thin. So I'm going to answer this as if you're stretched too thin and you want to do everybody's research, but you're going to have to ignore or deprioritize someone. And I wrote down 2 notes here: planning and bottleneck means you need to hire. So first of all, as Nick said, and just to expand on that, if you don't know what's the best research to do in this PI or sprint or whatever, then it sounds like the planning is off. And if you're not being told way ahead of time what's coming down the road that might need your research or testing, the planning is way off. So I would say work with other people on your team. You might have to bring in your manager and talk more about better earlier planning so that you understand your priorities and you can estimate your time and get things in where they need to be. Second, if you are the bottleneck, as unfortunately researchers have been at almost every company I have worked at, then use that to call for them to hire more people. It's what any other domain would do. If a product management team needed more product managers, they would raise a request to hire another product manager. For some wacky ass reason, when we don't have enough UX researchers, someone says, should I just teach a product manager to do research? Well, that's funny. They're not teaching us to do product management. So no, stop thinking you can quickly upskill your teammates. They're not going to be as good as a specialist researcher. And why are we keeping jobs from those people? So I would say use that, hey, I'm stretched too thin, I have no bandwidth, I get these last minute requests, I can't fulfill them, I have to ignore people. We need more researchers. Sure, the company thought research wasn't that important and you just needed me, but now people are asking me for things and there isn't enough of me to go around. Let's hire more. So I'll cross out my notes. That's where I stand on that. Iton says, yeah, Debbie, you're so right. We have like hundreds of devs and 2 researchers in the whole company. So let me put up Iton's follow-up question, which I thought was so relevant enough I was going to move it here. Ray in LinkedIn, I do see your question. It's at the end of the list because we have a long list because many people sent in their questions ahead of time. Aitan's follow-up question was, I'm curious, when you level up, become a senior researcher or designer, do product managers still give you orders, or you're the one who decides what to work on? Ooh, it hurts. Nick? It hurts.
Okay, so just my perspective, it's a bad thing. It's not a sign of newness or inexperience when somebody's telling you what to do. Okay, that's a good thing. It's like bypassing a brief where you've got to interpret all that bollocks. This is what I need you to do. You're like, great, let me go do my job. It's like me turning up as a plumber or an electrician at a house and them saying, that's what I need you to do. Fan freaking tastic. Not it's somewhere in the house, you're getting warm. That's crazy. You know? Okay, so I mean, if you consider me senior, well, I am senior, right? I actively look for people to tell me what to do in this regard. Now, there's something I have to caveat, having listened to what Darren's answer was, which is a good answer. It's all good. In an immature UX organization, and you get a user, suddenly everybody thinks we've got some kind of market research capability, right? And it's like, can you tell me what you want? Can you tell me this stuff? Like, what do they want to buy next? Should we make it blue? Tell me, what do we do? And if that's the case, and you're being deluged with those sorts of questions, then yeah, you don't do it my way. You don't just blindly follow. You know, that's not a product person instructing you. That's just like Debbie them saying, frivolous. Like, oh wow, let's have a go at this. There's no business reason or a solid rationale for spending that time and, frankly, money on doing that work. Sorry, could you just? I've got so away from the question. Oh yeah, about. As you get more
I'm
senior,
also hoping if I keep these questions up, we'll actually stick to them a little bit better.
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting tangential. Okay, let me get back on, and I'll get more lightning about it.
Yes.
In a mature organization, sprint planning is a negotiation or a discussion with the product person, the delivery lead, and the user researcher, with the team in effect. And that's when we decide what we're going to do next week. In a mature thing, like I say, I look to get result. I look to be told. In a less mature thing, I'll do the funneling thing as my previous answer, basically. So bottom line is it's not a bad thing.
Darren.
Yep, and I agree. It's the project manager is the project manager. The UX person is not the project manager in general. So we're looking to get insights and direction from them. I love the metaphor about the plumber. Somebody has brought you in because there's a need that's been brought up. Now, like at sort of mixing my last answer with this one, a plumber or a person can call you in as a plumber, and they think it's one thing, but then you, upon investigation, find out it's something completely different. That the kid put some Legos in the toilet, and you found the Legos in there. You thought it was something completely different. So that's where I can stretch that metaphor a little bit, where we apply the critical thinking. But we need them; they need us. Them as direction. It is not generally, unless you're doing benchmarking. For the most part, we're waiting for these team engagements so that we can discover what's going on and what's valuable to the business. Remember, we're trying to gain wins for the users, but also wins for the business. And somebody is going to hand that information, a great deal of it, down to us. And so we're ready to attack based on what those insights are. So yeah, it by no means is it a some type of a demotion, if you will, for lack of a better term, to get direction from product managers and from product owners. We're supposed to get that in an environment where the structure is there. There are some where sometimes it might come from someone else, and it's the same thing. UXers aren't leading in the way. We make discoveries, and we can bring them up, but we're getting a lot of that initial business direction from people that are leaders in the business.
Yeah, and what I would add to that is just that to me, there's a difference between other teammates collaborating with me on priorities and other teammates telling me, exactly what to do. Like if you're a designer, you don't want to hear, "Hey, I'm the product owner, but I started wireframing or sketching this. Here, you work on this." Okay, do not want. And if I'm the researcher, I don't want to hear, "Hey, we're really running low on time. Can you just please prove that this idea is a good one?" So these are the things I
I love
don't
that one.
want. But yeah, these are the things I don't want. But if a product owner or manager or a scrum master or somebody says, these are our priorities for this sprint or the next sprint, UX, can you focus on this? I usually don't have a problem with that because that's just team coordination. But I do sometimes have a bit of a problem with it if stuff feels like a surprise. Like, hey, if we're supposed to be release planning, I should know what's coming in the next release so that when we get to that sprint where you want me to do that thing, I knew about that ahead of time. So I still do fight for UX to do its own time estimation and its own planning, but I do believe that's in collaboration with other teammates because they're going to help tell me what some of the team priorities are. Hello, Ralitza. Okay, next question that we got ahead of time. And if you want to send in your questions anonymously or ahead of time, check the top right of the screen if you're looking at it or seeing it. It is deltacx.link/ask, and that's where you can send questions now and ahead of time, and why we already have a long list of questions before we even started. So here is our next question, and it says, how to upgrade research strategy from validating problems stakeholders and team members already know, which sounds like what I just said, to the aha moment or something, wow, we never thought about it before. I know there's no magical formula, but are there any techniques that dig deeper into the problem instead of focusing on superficial things, especially if you've got a quick and short design sprint time frame? Oh, it hurts. I definitely have a million answers to this one. Guys, what do you want to, Darren, do you want to start this time?
I'll start, and I'm going to keep it brief, especially since I know you folks are going to have something to tack on to this. I think for me, it's all about the critical thinking. It's all about being inquisitive. One of the core factors at the heart of a really sound UX professional is to be extremely inquisitive. So when something is presented to us, let me back up. From a strategy perspective, we always have a broad view. When somebody presents something to us, a problem stakeholder, they already have certain things in mind. Because we have that inquisitive mindset, and because we're always engaging from a critical thinking perspective, there will always be this discovery of at least the potential. There's always the potential of making a discovery, something that none of the stakeholders, none of the clients, that nobody actually had on their radar. I can't tell you the amount of times I've presented something and somebody said, "Oh, I never thought of that," or "Oh, I didn't even see that," or "Oh, I didn't even think to ask about that." That's one of the times when we hear that, we know that we're digging into the weeds. That's what the UX people do. We specialize in digging in the weeds in a profitable way, something that's going to gain wins. So let's make sure we're inquisitive. Keep that Sherlock Holmes hat on. I forgot what they call it, but keep that hat on all the time. So you're always digging, always investigating, always questioning. And even after the project is done, we're still questioning. We're still investigating. That one. Okay. Critical thinking hat. That works. That works. So that's what we do. That's who we are. That's what we do. And for those who are more junior in the discipline, you're developing that more and more and more, and you're becoming more and more of that inquisitive person as opposed to taking orders. Because when people first come in, they don't know a lot of times that we're not order takers. So that's it. That's my short answer.
Nick, something to add?
Can I have the question back up, please?
Yes.
Because there's two parts to this question. I'm going to be brief. But so how do you upgrade from validating already know, which is a confirmation bias? And the second section is techniques about superficial versus other stuff. I'm going to try and answer. Well, the first one is one that I've had on my current project, where they spent 2 years doing some form of weird discovery and build without involving users, which was surreal. And then they've asked us to use the test stuff at the end and to kind of validate what they've already built. that's a cultural shift. That's a transformation that you need to get into a user-centric way of doing things. Stop building things first. Speak to users, understand their needs first, then build things that meet their needs. I mean, I know you guys know this. It's just that's the basic messaging that needs to go through into the business. Ultimately, we are just UXers of various different kinds. We're not delivery leads. We're not product managers. This actually falls way outside of what we do. It's just we do what we do to try to make our own lives easier. But often a lot of these issues that are being raised they're falling in our laps because no one else is taking care of them, or the people that are meant to be taking care of them aren't. As for the second part of the question, I think I'm going to leave that to Deb, because I think I can't really answer it well, and I don't want to take up airtime unnecessarily. I don't have any techniques. The only technique I would say is hypothesis management. And if you know my approach, which is science-based and hypothesis-driven, if you're logging your hypotheses very much like a product person that keeps a roadmap, if you're putting your hypotheses into your personae, for example, when you're socializing the results of those hypotheses, you can put stupid hypotheses in and good hypotheses in. They'll get handled the same, and they'll come out with whatever the appropriate answer is. I think that's a really great way to train the audience is, I don't know, let me find out. Not, that's a dumb one, I'm not going to do that. Do a couple of dumb ones and they'll find out that it was dumb, But it's part of you showing them why it was dumb and what you could do better. Or what I often do is, okay, I've heard what you've said. Let me characterize that in a hypothesis that I'm happy with, that hopefully they'll just go, yeah, okay. And we can kind of jimmy it into something a bit more palatable or actually productive or valuable. That's me. Over to you, Miss Deb.
Yeah, so I would have to say for the wow or aha moment, I think there's a couple of things that I would say. Number one, I do find that sometimes people research or test the wrong things. They end up in maybe sometimes an accidental marketing bucket where they think they have to go out and research, what do people like? Or what do our competitors look like? Or here's a design we have. Do people like it? And I feel like you don't get, and if Larry were here, he would also say that if you tend to do research or usability testing, like evaluative research on your current design, you're probably going to end up making small incremental changes rather than have a big aha moment for what kind of complete redesign you need, especially when you're testing with existing users who already know the system and know the workarounds. You're not going to find the big aha there. So I would probably be saying, watch the questions you ask or the tasks you give people, and watch who these users are, because don't just go for your current customers. Try to go out and find from panels or other sources people who could be your customers because they fall into the target audience, but they are not your customers. And these are people who've never seen your system before, chances are, and that way they will say something fresh. And then, of course, I would recommend a task analysis. And you can see the micro lessons playlist for how to do a task analysis. But I find that once you're getting really granular and going beyond the customer journey map, beyond the jobs to be done to the task analysis, and you're seeing all of the tools, workarounds, missing knowledge, blockers that people truly have, and the ways that they try to glue their own task back together, I find that's where the aha tends to live. So yeah, I hope that helps. Let me get some more questions up. Sebastian, I see your question, but you are on the end of a long list, so know that we will get to you eventually. Everybody remember, these shows are always archived on the YouTube channel, so if you do need to come back later because you missed the answer to your question by the time we got to it, you can always check in the live stream podcasts playlist. Before I go to my next question, I also want to do something new that we're doing here on the show, which is to thank the people who have been donating to the channel, including our friend Darren here, as paid members on the channel. And Darren's like, what? I'm a paid member? Cancel that shit. But thanks to the people here who are paid members at the mid-level or higher, I appreciate the financial support of the channel, which I do use to invest in the channel and eat chocolate chips. So thanks to Anita, Chang, Darren, Irena, Jordan, Michelle, Nikki, Ralitza, Ray, and Solomon, and our new higher level subscriber, Mix Betty. So thank you so much there. Okay, the next question we got, Kayleen says, oops, I thought jobs to be done in task analysis were similar. Yes and no. Story for another day. Okay, a question that came in anonymously was, are unicorns real? Darren, are unicorns real?
It depends. No.
Hold on.
I mean, because you know what's funny about that? Unicorns are defined differently. We know what everybody knows. If you don't know what a unicorn is, it's a person that pretty much can do everything.
Jack of all unicorns, as I like to say.
Yeah. But it's, funny, something funny about that old jack of all trades quote. It's usually only partially quoted. The person says, they talk about being a jack of all trades, but a master of none. But the same person goes on to say, I'd rather be a master of some, and sort of paraphrasing, in exposing myself in a broad way, I will eventually master some. And so, but people take the one part, they cherry pick it, and then they speak against people who do too much. That's it. Where you hear the unicorn bit, you'll hear it in different circles, and it sort of kind of means different things. The one common denominator is that it's somebody that's got their toe in a lot of pools, so to speak. They're doing a lot of different things. So when someone says, is a unicorn real? You want to get the context. Is who's saying it? Why are they asking? If a person is asking if there is a UX person that can do all the things, then you need to find out what all the things are. Because it's highly likely that that person does not exist. And then I'll just leave it at that and leave the rest of it for Dr. Nick and for Debbie. But don't let that common mindset against being a jack of all trades stop you from trying to learn as much as you can about UX. You want to be as broad-based as you can in your acumen. I'll leave it at that.
Oh, here's a good one from Ikaning, who I'm not sure I'm pronouncing correctly, is unicorn, jack of all trades, salary of one.
Nah. Still one
All right. Dr. Nick, are unicorns real?
They used to be, and they might be. I haven't seen one for a long time. A real unicorn.
Yeah.
Unicorns in our world, or at least my world, were always. There are a couple of people I've met on the road who are fantastic front-end developers and amazing UXers and creative directors type thing, right? Back in the day, let's say 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, as our practice was more nascent and the digital world was more immature, it was easier to be a unicorn because you could become a master of a few disciplines, that T-shaped or whatever they call it, F-shaped or whatever, that one, right? But now, 10, 12 years later or whatever it is, each one of those prongs of the fork has got a lot deeper. And actually, now you're taking away from your time in investing in those other skill sets. And that's why unicorns are less spotted these days, because you're wasting your time if you're spreading yourself too thinly. So yeah, unicorn was like an expert know-it-all or do-it-all. And these days we've diversified and we've got so many dedicated roles and even unnecessarily dedicated roles that there's kind of no place for a unicorn anymore, except the startup.
Yep.
That's basically it.
So my answer to that would be, I'm so old that I used to define a unicorn as someone who was really excellent at the visual design and branding and was genuinely excellent at UX design. That was my old definition from like 2012. If you were really good at those two things, because I hadn't seen a lot of people that were really amazing artists and then really genuinely great with information architecture and interaction design. And that to me was a unicorn. And I knew like two people who I thought were genuinely deeply talented artists and great with the information architecture and interaction design. I think now when most people hear unicorn, they are envisioning like the entire user-centered design process, and they're thinking like, oh yeah, this person's a researcher and an information architect and an interaction designer and a visual designer and stuff I don't even have on this graphic. You know, they're a front-end developer and they know SEO and Google Analytics. And I think we've gotten to the point where the unicorn thing doesn't even make any sense anymore. And the bottom line, as I keep saying since episode 115, don't forget to watch that, or actually 116, which is congratulations, you're a unicorn. You can do the entire user-centered design process and more. You're the reason we keep being told we're not agile. We're not agile because many agile teams have put one UX person on the team or split allocation, right, Darren? You're not 100% allocated to a team. You're 20, 30, 50% allocated to a team. Now 6 to 10 engineers expect 1/3 of Darren to keep up with them. And it's impossible. And so when that person has to do research and design and thing and other thing and design system and whatever, I at this point don't care if you're a unicorn or not. The job is unreasonable, and it enables our teammates to say, look, UX isn't agile, so we just have to skimp on it and circumvent it. Look how slow these people are. You know, they wanted weeks to do all of this work, and I just keep saying, oh yeah, give me 5 people, give me 2 architects and 3 designers, and I promise we will be fast and efficient and not the bottleneck anymore. But when it's 1/3 of Darren, so I don't want to see unicorns. I want to see teams of talented people, whether they're specialists or T-shaped or whatever, being more efficient and helping us be agile and helping us be lean. Because otherwise, and as for all you newbie unicorns out there coming out of boot camps and stuff, to me, a unicorn is magical because they're great at all these things. Not because they learned a little bit about all these things. So I don't think of you as a unicorn, and I barely think of you as a generalist until you are great at these things, hireable for all of these things. So I take a different approach.
Yeah, one is a Swiss Army knife.
Right.
And if you only know a little bit, you're a polywog. You're not a unicorn.
And remember, for the Swiss Army knife, you really can't use the knife and the scissors at the same time. You've got one tool that you can take out. Yeah, you've got one tool you can take out, and we're all going to have to wait for that to happen. And now someone's going to cry waterfall and big design up front. Ralitza has a follow-up. Why don't companies understand that it is a huge mistake to want that? I mean, you're not going to make your developer do something else, will you? Right. Developers keep developing. Nobody asks developers to suddenly do some marketing. Guys, any response to Ralitza's point, or we can just leave it? Darren.
UX maturity levels. That's part of it. When the UX maturity level is where we want it, then there's a bit better response and a bit better set of expectations around.
Yeah, and I've been saying lately that UX maturity is customer centricity. When people really start caring about customers and customer experiences and satisfaction, that's when that maturity is going up. But while we think UX is a checkbox that we tick off because somebody sketched some screens, then we're not UX mature, and we're not customer centric because we didn't care about the quality of what we gave the customer. Okay, I'm talking too much. Let's get a fresh question up here for the guys. Do you have any recommended activities or workshops to help teams brainstorm questions? I'm a newish UX researcher. Okay, I'm worried this person is doing research by committee now. I'm a newish UX researcher and I'm leading research road mapping for the first time and struggling to figure out what kind of interactive session will be engaging, but also help designers, engineers, and PMs get out any questions they feel they have about our users and discover where we have gaps in knowledge.
Holy shit.
Now, I know it's good to get teammates questions about users and to learn well, actually, not their questions about users. It's good to collect our teammates' goals. What do you need to
Yes.
know? So don't tell me what question to ask. What do you need to know to better inform your decisions or work? But it doesn't sound like, and I don't know if it's just the way the question's being asked, but it doesn't sound like that's the direction this person is going in. It sounds like this is more of a question asking workshop rather than outcomes, rather than asking teammates outcomes. What do I need to learn about our users or concept from this research to inform your work and decisions? That's what I would be asking my teammates rather than, can you please come up with questions for users? Nick, where are you on this one?
I need to ask a question back. Maybe they can answer in chat if they're watching. What is this research road mapping we're talking about here? Is that the product roadmap and therefore the research activity? Is
Or
that
is
what
it
we're
just
talking about?
research
Because
planning?
yeah, I'm not sure. So like this, I mean, again, there should be sprint planning. You should have a product person saying, and all the stuff that we mentioned earlier about discussing and planning, and then you go and do. If that's not happening, and it's exactly as Debbie is saying, you've just got this kind of all sorts committee of everybody kind of going, right, what do we need to learn? And I'm taking words right out of Debbie's mouth here. It's what do you need to know? Where's the product or service at, and what informs the next stage of development or design or wherever you're at? I fear that you are being kind of dragged into this committee as this newish person when it comes down to maturity and agility, and unfortunately what we all do fits into a kind of a mechanic, a machinery, which is a delivery methodology, and that's usually agile. Unfortunately, because it varies literally gig to gig or place to place, it's very hard for anybody to get any kind of standardness over it. I'm sorry you're in this position. I don't think it's fair or nice that you're in this position, especially if you are newish to this role. I don't think you should have all these people trying to drag you all over the place. Is this Relitsa? Is this
No,
your
that's not
question?
I don't think it's from Bralica, but remember, she's got 12 years being an agile coach, scrum master, product manager. So she transitions to UX research from the other side. And so she is suggesting having one-on-ones with your key stakeholders, PMs, business folks, devs, get their objectives, constraints, and needs individually, then suggest a plan based on that information rather than doing it workshop style.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, this is where the product person who knows their product, knows the stage of development, knows where they are in their roadmap, and knows what they need to know next. Or what have you just learned that it also then forks your research, or it informs the direction that it takes. I think you need to get it back on the rails. That's again, I don't know the maturity of the product you're working on. Maybe you're in a discovery phase. You're still right at the outset, and it's all right. How are we going to plan this thing? Maybe that is the case, and in which case you do need all those voices in the room. It's so much. It depends. Again, I hate saying it. I can't give you a technique, so I'm sorry.
I think Nick's right, because if you leave this up to research by committee or questions to ask users by committee, you'll probably never have that control again. If you start teaching people that this is how research is planned, and whenever I've research to do, I'm going to call a meeting or a workshop, and we're all going to write questions for the users, and then how are you going to handle the awkward moment where people write shitty questions for the users, and you have to say, no, I'm sorry, we're not going to ask them these things. And so that's why I typically don't like to workshop a lot of things, because I think it creates a lot of awkward moments. I like Ralitsa's idea: meet with people one-on-one, learn their goals and the outcomes and their knowledge gaps, and see the plan that you can come up with to fill that in. Darren, something to add?
Well, no, I was going to say the same thing that Ralitsa
Okay.
said, because I call that old school, because it's more, that's the expert approach. UX is an expert domain. And a lot of people are getting involved. Even when you're new, please know and understand, you have now stepped into an expert domain. And what's happening in a lot of spaces is the expertise associated with UX is unknown, disregarded, discounted, disavowed. And then people override it with this whole design by committee or research by committee component, which is counterproductive for the discipline and is counterproductive for the person. I echo Dr. Nick's sentiments. I really feel sorry for the person to be in that position, because I know you're probably excited. Anybody would be, to be excited in this situation, but that excitement has to be tempered, which is why I usually sound off on the things I sound off about, because you have to temper that excitement or you're going to get blindsided. And in this particular case, designing by committee is going to make people feel like they're involved, and really all it's doing is triggering IKEA effect bias. As Debbie said, you're going to end up with a bunch of the wrong questions. You're not going to be probing. You're not going to be getting the information that you need. And so, exactly as was stated, talk to the people individually. You need to build relationships anyway, which is going to be valuable not only to this project, but a lot of other things down the road. And that's going to be good for the overall team dynamic between your UX team and the stakeholders in your organization. So talk to them individually, get that information. It's great to not have to be subjected to the group speak that will happen in that committee anyway. And you're going to be a lot better off for it.
And please remember that even though you might be new to UX research, even if this is your first job, part of your job are all of the phases of research. And I haven't made a graphic with that one yet, but all of the planning, the screening, the recruiting and scheduling, unless you've got a partner or assistant, but this is in your wheelhouse: running the sessions, interpreting stuff. And there are certainly times where sometimes we bring in other people, like teammates who want to observe the sessions or watch the videos later, or share their notes with us. That makes sense. But I'm worried about them writing questions with you, and I just want to make sure you know that it's okay for you to write questions yourself, and that you can always ask these people what they need to learn and what information is missing, and you can write the questions. You don't need to write questions by team. Dr. Nick?
Yeah, also don't forget, if we're talking about pandemic remote workshops, crowd control is always a problem for all levels of UX in physically co-located workshops, right? The more people you have, the more different tribes you've got, it can get really spicy. I've been in some almost aggressive ones. But we're now in pandemic, where for the next year or two, or maybe for the foreseeable future, there's a lot more remote going on. Crowd control online with 3 people is quite hard, as you can see. It's really, really hard with 10, 15, 20, as you've probably seen in stand-ups each morning. So it's not, workshops are not conducive. You got all the stuff that Darren said, which is bang on with the groupthink and all the bias stuff. But it's like multiplied in a whole bunch of new SKUs in this remote world. So yeah, workshops typically bad, actually.
Yep, and Ralitsa is also saying it's really counterproductive to have a bunch of people in the same room when the objectives, constraints, and needs are unclear, or the information is abstract or loosely defined. Yeah, sorry, my my things cut off there, but thank you, Ralitza, for helping us out on that one. That was beautiful. I'm going to move on to the next one just because we have so many questions to get through. Thanks to everybody for asking. Hi, Three Musketeers. What's one cognitive psychology related book or any type of literature every UX researcher or designer should read? Now, of course, you should be Googling Darren Hood's living list of books, but it's got poor information architecture and it's a long list. Darren,
No.
Oh,
That's
no?
done by design. That's done by design.
Uh-oh.
I left information architecture off the list on purpose.
Poopy by design.
No, to weed out lazy people.
Oh. And I was like, this is bad information architecture. These don't even have a hierarchy.
There's a note on there that says that I did that. I didn't explain why, and it was a smiley face or something. I did that. All my other book lists have information architecture. That one does not. By design.
The one on Medium?
Yes. There's about 5 of them. All the rest of them have.
Information architecture needs more information architecture. Well, I don't read a lot of books, so I'm going to leave this to you guys. Cognitive psychology books from the two guys who know it better than I do. What do you think?
I'm actually bringing up my list to make sure that I get the one. So you can go ahead, Dr. Nick.
Let me just preface whatever Darren's about to say by cognitive psychology probably isn't what you think it is. Okay, lots of people use the word cognitive because it sounds good in the mouth. It's like cognitive. I sound sciencey, right? You would go ahead and read a cognitive psychology textbook. Guarantee you fall asleep. They're boring AF. Just putting that out there. So I was brought up on things like Baddeley and Hitch, which is like the whole memory, the world of memory. Cognitive psychology is black box diagrams kind of thing, you know, box, because we can't see any of this stuff. It's all closed box stuff. You see the input, see the output, behavior, blah, right? So you could say it's all fairy tales if you're a behaviorist like me. Cognitive psychology is fascinating, but there's a lot of different areas. You could look at memory, you could look at perception. There's lots of different things to look at. If you want to read JJ, what's his face, the classic perception books. What I'm trying to say is if you think that cognitive psychology is going to directly apply in your daily UX life, I don't think that's the case. And that's me as Mr. Psychology saying that. I think there's I could be wrong. Maybe I'm being a dick, but I don't reach for my cognitive psychology many times. It's specialist tools that I pull out for specialist parts of the gig. Darren, is that fair to say, or am I being unfair, or how do you feel about that?
You're dead on the money. Dead on the money. There are 3 things I want to say about this question. One is if you do a search, if you go to Amazon and do a search, UX cognitive psychology, the results flat out suck. Number 1. The result. Just write the list off. I almost am inclined to say that there's not a lot out there about cognitive psychology that's approached from a UX perspective. And when it does, it's not really talking about cognitive psychology. It's just related to it, where because you know what it is, you can connect the dots. It's not necessarily that's what happened. So that said, I'll mention 2 books that will at least come close and help you, because I know what you're after in asking the question. And those 2 books are, one of them is called Hooked by Nir Eyal. Hooked: How to Build Habit-Forming Products. Remember, you're not going to see this huge breadth of cognitive psychology. You're not going to see that. Number 1. Number 2, Design for How People Think, Using Brain Science to Build Better Products by John Whalen. That's the other one that I would recommend. But again, you're not going to find, you do a search on UX cognitive psychology books. I couldn't believe the results that came back on Amazon. I mean, it was like I'm not a violent person. You want to blow it up. What in the world is this that comes back? I mean, the third book in the list is I want a UX job. Why is
Oh
that?
boy.
Or the fourth book? Why does that even come up in based on my keywords?
And can somebody answer
It's a
Kayleen's
tag.
question? Does
I
Gestalt
can't.
fall under cognitive psychology?
No, it can be related to, but I'll say no.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Maybe yeah, it's not very much. Which is another reason why the number 2 book that comes up on that search, which is nothing but a refactoring and a curation of psychological
UX
principles.
laws?
Yeah, and I love how one person said recently, there's no such thing as UX laws, there are UX theories. And that when you say that there are laws, that's indicting that there are no
Darren,
laws.
we're always laughing about it depends, and therefore there can't be a law because there'd be so many laws because there's so many it depends. Right?
Yeah. And if there were UX laws, there sure in the world would be more than 10 to 20. If there are only 10 to 20 UX laws, we're all done for. So something is terribly
Hey, all you have to do is
wrong.
learn the laws and you're a certified UX designer.
And
But
that's the
let's say you could
mindset
take
of the
all of the
people who
knowledge out of our
subscribe.
heads.
Yes.
If you could take the knowledge out of our heads, we'd be lawyers. We'd be like UX lawyers with statutes of UX laws and saying, if you've got a CTA that's red and a thing, it would be ridiculous.
Yeah. And that kind of stuff comes from people that try to turn UX into a discipline of checklists. Everything is a checklist. Did I check the boxes? No, it's not. You better learn how to pivot. You need to learn how. Yeah, that's what it is. And then when they find out that you know something, they try to step on you and make you irrelevant because they're trying to eliminate the accountability and the true, genuine acumen associated with the discipline. Yeah. So you're not going
to. Bitch, you're the gatekeeper Delta CX t-shirt, Ms. Debbie Levitt.
I need someone to design it. Everyone knows I'm a terrible artist. I need to get some designers to make some merch, and I'll split the money with you. Let me get a question up on the screen. This one's mostly for Dr. Nick. It says, I read Dr. Nick's LinkedIn post about mental health the other day, and it made me think, can we talk more about mental health in UX? How do you make sure you're protecting your mental health and avoiding burnout? When the company, for example, is not taking UX seriously or your suggestions seriously, how do you make sure you don't start questioning your competence?
That's a good question. How do you stop? I'll start with the end first, like the recency effect here. How do you make sure you don't start questioning your competence? It comes down to where you are in your team. Obviously, if you're a lead, that's whatever. But generally, if you're a senior, mid, junior, it's about being an appropriate level, not doing that premature thing, pushing yourself too far ahead, and being an open book, an open mind, and learning and using your opportunities on the gig, on wherever you are, to make yourself better. Because you're not expected unless you're the lead, or unless you're the lead. You're not expected to be ultimately competent. And that's what I think our world needs to really fully appreciate. And that's one of the things the design world does spectacularly well, is if you've been doing this for a year or you've been doing this for 3 or 4 years, you need some help. You need some support. You're not fully competent, but you're an apprentice who's learning your trade. And so unless you're a lead, you shouldn't have to feel that full confidence. You should have confidence to do the stuff that you're getting better at, and you should have a supporting senior or lead who's helping you fill in the bits that you're not so confident or competent in. With regards to mental health, we live in a mad world, and whether you've got ADHD like me, whether you're neurotypical, neurodiverse, everybody's mental health is critically important. It's not just a me thing or a thing. We work in a particularly toxic industry. That's just straight up the facts.
Yes.
Whether that's just a microcosm or a subset of the wider world probably is true. Misinformation is everywhere. People are lying. All the stuff that you hear me rant about is common. But when it's in your job and your wealth or your financial stability is related to that, that's a massive amount of pressure because you're investing your time in your career. Me, I've got mouths to feed, you know. I mean, it's like I've got a kid in private school, I've got bills to pay, you know. How do you protect your mental health is don't overstep your experience so that competence thing is, you're not expected to be more competent than you actually are. That takes a lot of the pressure off. The money will come in time. Stop running for the money. I didn't run for the money. I left my PhD defended and started on £34,000 a year. I'm going to repeat that again. I finished my PhD defended and started on 34 grand a year as a junior UXer. Okay. I now earn a very tight, tasty day rate, but it's taken me 12 years to work up to that. That's because I'm competent and confident, but that's taken a lot of mistakes since getting here. So what I'm saying is protect your mental health by not overstepping. That's basically it. If you stay open and supple mentally and accept that you're learning and there's lots of different ways, and the it depends is so critical that you'll learn when it depends on this and when it depends on that, and you'll learn all these array of things that can't be put into a book. There is no playbook, despite the fact it's called the laws of UX. I'm rambling. You get my point, Mr. Hood. Dr. Hood, sorry.
Future Dr. Hood.
The first thing, I'm going to do the same thing Dr. Nick did. I want to start off on that last part too. Never let the acceptance or rejection of what you do as a UX professional be the determining factor of your level of competence. You are who you are. You are what you have built, and you will always be that. That's why I have that piece I did. I know there are different thoughts on the whole imposter syndrome bit, but I did a piece going back and tracing the history of imposter syndrome and how people rose at how they arrived at the conclusion that that was a thing. They allowed somebody's failure to receive them to come up with that concept. Don't repeat that process. You are who you are. Are you skilled? Do you have a degree? Have you accomplished? And nobody can ever take your accomplishments away from you. Ever. You had a big project that you had a big win on. It was really successful. The users loved it. It tested well. The company's making all of these types of things. And now today somebody's giving you a hard time. That doesn't take away from you who you are. So never, ever forget that, number one. Number two, don't be married to something I learned earlier in my career, because I used to be married to my recommendations and I started to suffer for it. And I eventually had a conversation with a boss that I'll never forget. I've talked about this on my podcast. He told me that some conflict is actually healthy. And I was about to walk away from UX in 2008. I was ready to walk away. I was done with UX. I didn't realize that it was a toxic discipline. I didn't realize that people don't care how much research you've done. I didn't realize, but I thought that, when I do all these great wireframes and everything, that everybody's just going to embrace it lovingly. And you have, when you first start out, you have this mindset, like this field of dreams mindset. Oh, I built it, so they will love it kind of thing. I built it, they will come. And you find out it's the direct opposite, and it's enough to rip you apart. But if you realize, don't be married to it. I learned at my job, I embrace healthy conflict. Some conflict is good. So if somebody does even push back, something good may come out of that. So what? I learned that once I make a recommendation and I present expert voice and I've advocated for the users and I'm aware of the business needs and I've hit that sweet spot in that Venn diagram. Once I've done that, if they reject or don't follow my recommendations, then they don't follow the recommendations. I'm not married to it, and I move on to the next project. Because I guarantee you, if you do the right thing, and you represent expert voice, and you do everything you're supposed to do, and they ignore you, and that thing fails, I hope everything was documented, because they're going to come back. I've seen it. They come back to, I think it's time we listen to Debbie. I think we should start listening to Dr. Nick. That comes out later, so we have to weather the storm. Be ready to be patient and go forward. What was that?
it usually, that's so Darren's on the money, but that penny dropping usually happens after you've left. So
Right.
don't let it drag you down, because you were doing the right thing,
Yes.
but the penny didn't drop till you've actually left the building. But you've still done the right thing. It's just you didn't get the plaudits or the praise or the recognition. But that's okay. You've got to be quite very thick-skinned in our world.
That
One thing I just want to add very, very quickly. This is for
yeah.
everybody who's junior and mid. I remember distinctly being at UX London in like 2011 and seeing Andy Bard and these legends of British UX on stage talking about their ways of thinking, and I remember thinking, going, I'm never going to think like that. I can't. And I do think like that now, many years later. So the point is that confidence, that imposter bias, relax. I know there's, in the modern world, it's all about learning quickly and fast and blah, blah, blah. But trust me when I say this, the magic happens around, I might not want to hear this, the magic starts happening around year 5 or maybe year 6. It's a bit like the first 5 years were like university, and the applied education, the professional development, the meta learning, whatever, the teaching yourself, the pedagogy, whatever, I don't know, you accelerate. The exponential curve just goes up from year 5 around there. So what I'm saying is sit tight for those 4 or 5 years, stay open-minded. Even bad experiences are good experiences. They're building you as a practitioner, and then 5 years, 5 or 6, you'll just take off. Those people that jump out in those 5 years into product or other things weren't cut out for this. Bottom line.
So, knowing that this is a long answer to a good question, let me throw in my 2 cents and then we'll jump to another question. So, first of all, can we talk more about mental health and UX? Yes, we should. How do you make sure you're protecting your mental health and avoiding burnout? We actually had an entire track on this at my Concentric conference in May. I did load up the videos, but I still haven't sent them live. So just please subscribe here on the YouTube channel, and eventually I will send those videos live, and you'll have 4 talks about burnout from earlier this year that you'll be able to watch. I'm sorry I haven't had time to send those live. And then I think you answered your own question when you said, when the company is not taking UX seriously, or you're suggesting seriously, how do you make sure you don't start questioning your competence? And the note that I wrote down here was, if you're asking that, then you already know to protect yourself. So I find that the people who don't know that it's a game and don't know why they feel so not confident, or imposter syndrome, or whatever they want to call it, those people didn't figure out why they feel that way. And it usually is from the people around them not taking them seriously. So if you can see that coming and have that self-awareness and situational awareness to understand, like, this isn't my fabric, this is somebody else's stuff. Don't let somebody else's stuff become part of your fabric. And you're just going to have to use your resilience to say, this is the low maturity of my job, and this is the people around me, and it is not about my competence at all. And do your best to put on that armor, because it sounds like you can see this coming, so you're ahead of everybody else. So use that knowledge and that perspective and that awareness to keep yourself from getting down. And then as for burnout, you probably get days off and time off and whatever. Take it. Don't save it up. Take it. Take it. Start taking Thursdays and Fridays, or Mondays and Tuesdays here and there. Start give yourself long weekends, sleep in, go on a road trip, turn off the email, give yourself some real distance from here. And it sounds like start applying to other jobs. Okay, we've got somebody who wants us to react to a tweet from Erica Hall. And I'll read you the tweet in a moment, since I don't expect you to type that in. I have it open on another screen. It says, I saw this tweet and thought, are we designers really eliminating the whole system and we focus on 1 or 2 problems or solutions? So now I'm going to read you Erica Hall's tweet. And it says, as a framing, UX design is like the fillet of design sitting there in a cute little meat tray. Like, oh, I'm just going to focus on what one individual experiences at a time, ignoring the system and its implications. This is a vast oversimplification, sure. It's also an attitude. Let me copy and paste that tweet and put that up on the screen and see if anybody wants to react to Erica Hall's tweet.
I'll make it short and sweet. I just looked her up on YouTube. I'm not listening to her. I don't sort of kind of don't care what she thinks. I'm sort of full of non-UX people. I talked about this recently on LinkedIn. When non-UX people have a lot to say, not that they can't and they won't.
I think she's a well-known UX person and author.
Is she the one? Do I have the wrong Erica Hall?
Isn't she just enough research?
Yeah.
Isn't she Mike Montero's wife?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. She hasn't told. I wasn't invited.
I know when I look at her, I know she has a BA in philosophy. She was a project manager. She was a producer, and she was a co-founder and director of strategy of a studio.
Erica Hall, design strategist and consultant, author of Just Enough Research. Are you looking at the right person?
Yeah. Yeah, looks like it.
Actually done any UX?
That's what I'm not seeing. So I'm sort of not concerned with what she's saying. It may be that her history is not, she didn't show her advance or certain things like that, but I'm not seeing UX. I'm not seeing a demonstration of UX knowledge enough that I just go right past what she said. I don't even waste any time on it.
Well, it just looks like she's had her own agency since 2001, and so she's just worked for herself. So you're not going to see and she didn't take the time on LinkedIn to describe her work, and so it's making you assume that she doesn't have a strong background, but I don't know.
I don't see enough to make me, even on the where there could be some error, maybe in general, I have too many other places to get good information from to be worried about her and to deep dive it any further. If she didn't see fit to represent herself from a UX perspective that allows me to judge it properly, I got too many other fountains that I can drink from. I just move on.
Nick, something about this tweet you want to speak to?
Nah. It doesn't bear commentary. I can't even work it out.
Yeah, when I first read it, I was like, did Mike Montero write this? I couldn't figure out what she was really going for, and it seemed like one of the, I don't remember somebody tell me what the cognitive bias is called, where somebody creates
control.
Well, no, there's a cognitive bias where somebody creates a hypothetical example, but it's like not true for anybody. Like, I don't know anybody who does UX design by focusing on one single user only and ignoring the system and ignoring the context. So I don't understand who this is an example of, because it just seems like even boot campers aren't doing this. So I couldn't figure out who this even... It's like she's against something that I'm not sure exists, or if it exists, it's a real edge case. I don't know anybody doing this.
I don't know anybody who does what she's talking about, and she doesn't have a horse in the race.
I don't know.
Imagine
Thought
one of us saying something
y'all.
like, I don't know any carpenters that hit themselves on the head with carpenters hit themselves on the head with a hammer. Now, no carpenter actually does that, but this is somebody who never does carpentry talking about a hypothetical situation that never happens. That's why I don't think we should discuss it, because it's just garbage.
All right, I've put up the next question. Somebody wrote, I understand internship requirements, I guess, but why are most internships unpaid? This is far from equity, since most of us don't live with our parents. I certainly agree. Unpaid internships, commentary on unpaid internships. Darren.
Yeah, we're back to that. Get the graphic ready. It depends. I know I caught you mid-swig there.
Yes,
it depends.
Yes, I wasn't ready.
Two things stand out for me when I see that. Congratulations on being able to get an internship. It's worth its weight in gold. Unfortunately, it doesn't always pay off initially. Some internships pay, some don't. So when somebody says it's far from equity, I would have to fire back and ask, based on what? Because when you look at a broad perspective, if you look from an individual perspective, a person might feel that way because their internship doesn't pay. And I can show you 5 other people that have a paid internship. So when you look at internships, when you look at how different companies function, where the interns are coming from, things of that nature, it all depends on how the internship is structured, who's behind it, things of that nature. And then you just try to find multiple internships and hopefully find the one that pays. The good thing is if you can get some work you can do UX work as an intern initially, and it does not pay, it will pay you later. So having that experience is just extremely valuable. And a lot of people wish they were in that person's shoes, even if it was an unpaid internship. But don't say, you don't want to make a blanket statement about internships because they're not all the same and they're not managed the same way.
Nick, something to add about unpaid internships?
Not a lot. Again, yes, if you're adding value, you should be paid. Some internships with some brands or some opportunities are worth doing for free because of what Darren has said in terms of the value it brings. But like you said, we don't all live at our parents' homes. We do have rent to pay and bills to pay. And so therefore, intern is an option. I'd say interning is probably an option for the younger of us who have got those sorts of options. But
right.
Do you know what the bottom line is whatever your stage of life or finances or whatever your situation is, you do whatever you do to get into this UX market. And there's different ways in. Internship is just one of them.
Yeah, and what I would add to that is there are also laws in different areas about whether or not internships must be paid or can be unpaid. So that might vary state by state around America. Also, minimum wage is going to be different in different places. So even if you are making money, you might still find that it's not a living wage or whatever's a fair wage. It might be minimum wage. Very often internships and apprentices pay, at least in American money, $15 an hour. I've heard about people in the UK being paid 10 or 11 pounds an hour. And
Sorry.
Who's calling Dr. Nick right now? It's Erica
Sorry,
Hall.
You cuss my wife, I'm gonna fucking kill you.
Sorry, while I believe that interns and apprentices should be paid because they're doing real work, I believe they should get low pay because they're doing a lot of learning but real work. But you have to check whether or not it's legal where you live, and also the problem is we need more apprenticeships because internships usually require a university degree in whatever it is, or that you're in the middle of university education for whatever it is. And that's another problem because people who aren't doing university education, for the most part, can't get an internship. So again, there's a lot of opportunities here for lack of equity or equality. I don't like them, but there isn't anything I can do. And as the guy said, you can just be picky and choosy and try to find the ones that are paid, since I think there are more paid ones than unpaid ones right now, at least in America. Next question. I've been in several situations where the research findings can be interpreted as very different things. I found myself in a dilemma when taking design decisions. How do you deal with it? Okay, so this is a little bit about research interpretation, where it seems like you could interpret your findings in different ways and then you're not sure what design decision to make. Any general tips about analyzing research that might help you out here?
I don't think you're in any without more of it depends, but what are the research findings and why are they interpreted differently? There's one thing having
I'm going to take a quick bathroom break. You guys keep going.
Cool. There's one thing having let's say, I spoke to 100 people and 50 of them wanted red, 50 of them wanted blue. Okay, that's indecisive, or you know what I mean? Whereas some things, let's say we're looking at a graph of data and there's a peak or a trough, people will say, oh, that's attributable to seasonal spike, or that's, lots of reasons where you're interpreting that spike in different ways. So it really does depend upon what's going on. Ideally, you want to get yourself into a situation where it's not black and white, because we're very rarely in that kind of a luxurious situation, but where there's a very clear view of the research findings, so that it is not as open to interpretation. I try to make my stuff, where the data supports it, of that nature, not polarized, that's wrong, but clear, or at least presenting the findings in a very clear way, so that, okay, I'm talking about user needs and pain points predominantly. Those are usually my outputs. It's hard to interpret those differently or to argue with them. You can argue about the methodology, you can argue about the sample size and some bits and pieces, but really, if X number of people said one thing, why are you arguing with it? So I guess I'd want to understand from you more, what is the pushback? What's the discussion? Where's the gray area, if you know what I mean? Darren?
Yeah, and for me, well, excuse me, when I see this, I'm going to call it a scenario instead of a question. I began to think about something a little differently. I began to wonder what went into the design of the research, because I would think that when you're designing the research, that you are anticipating, participants always surprise us, but you're anticipating certain types of results to come out of that. So when you think about the design and the deliberation that goes into the designing the research, and you anticipate certain types of responses, if there's something outside of that realm, if you've executed to that extent from a strategic perspective, where now looking back at that question, the responses are outside the realm of what was expected in conjunction with what the design was supposed to produce, it still makes me want to go back and audit the design. If the responses are too far off the beaten path, did I make a mistake in the design of the research? I can't get away from that. And so it just makes me wonder, if you don't know what to do based on the results, we're still calling for a little bit more synthesis, a little bit more analysis, and a little bit more synthesis. And if necessary, bring some other UXers in and work through it and make decisions, and then decide, then do we need to make a decision? Because if you did a garbage in, garbage out, which is why I talked about the design, you don't want to act on the garbage out. If you have to bite the bullet and redo the research, then so be it as well. But don't feel like you're tied into responding to the research if you finally do discover that maybe I didn't design this properly. Maybe I missed it a little bit. Maybe there's something, because the last thing you want to do is apply something that was data that was derived from research that wasn't executed properly. Because remember, research is about actionable data. So before you say what,
retest.
Do it again. Yeah, you can do it again. If you find out it's right, do it again. You triangulate in the sense of where you're going to bring up, let's get a different group of people and let's see, because if the research was indeed designed properly and everything, you find out that everything is appropriate, and you get a completely different group, a different sample set, and the findings are somewhere completely different, then something else happened. And then how was the research conducted? Was it moderated? Was there somebody who was leading it that maybe, you could design research well and it's moderated, and the moderator, especially in this age of where they're trying to democratize, everybody wants to democratize UX. They don't democratize anything else but UX. So everybody is getting involved, and then then you get these faux researchers. You design your research properly, and then somebody doesn't know how to actually facilitate the research, and then they start helping. They start interjecting leading comments, different things start happening, and then the data is bad. So it might not be that you designed it wrong. There's a lot of different factors, and you're going to have to find out what before you feel like you're hogtied into working with that data. I highly recommend going back and backtracking and auditing what was done to see what was really going on.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I think this came from Denise, and I think Denise is the only UX person in a very engineering-driven company, from what I remember. Denise, I would say next time you're planning research, maybe ping me and have me take a quick peek at it. I'll help you out a little bit. But I would probably be worried that the research was not designed properly. I think sometimes, especially if you've been asking other people what we should ask people or what we should do, or sometimes the accident is we test for or we research, do people like this or would people like this? And when research gets a little bit fluffy and emotional, now we don't know what to design. We don't really have concrete information about who and what and how and tasks and steps and workarounds to say, aha, these are the pain points and these are things that I can improve or solve. So ultimately, you're looking in your research for anything that's a pattern, an insight, an opportunity, a pain point, something you can improve in your design. So I would probably want to look at how you planned the research and who you spoke to, because it could be the analysis, but my guess would be not the right tasks or questions and or not the right people. Otherwise, you should come out with something at the end where you go, oh, wow, I really learned more about, I've got my new graphic, people, systems, and context. Now I know something I could design or change or improve or work on. So what did you learn about any of those things from the research? Thanks for the question, and I hope that helps. We've got 2 more questions. So let's see. Aitan says, please democratize coding. I want to earn the same salary that developers get. Okay, we've got 2 questions that came from YouTube, so I can put them up on the screen instead of the giant block of greenness. I'll have to read this because it's a little bit cut off, and I'll have to roll back because it's cut off on my screen as well. Sebastian, this was your question, and let me roll back and find where you asked it. Here we go. Hi, Darren, Dr. Nick, and Debbie. What is your take on reusing past participants for other projects when finding niche participants willing to do research is so hard because of their schedule, etc.? Nick, yes.
This is very current for me. I've just been doing it. In fact, just this week, I saw a participant for the 3rd time in 5 sprints, basically, which is not good. But like you're saying, I had to be pragmatic. We need to move forward. We've got delivery deadlines. Yes, validity is at stake here. I understand it. Yet this is where, as a lead or as a senior, you have to know where the hustle point is. And that just comes from kind of experience. What is unacceptable is the project to stop because we don't have participants, right? But by the same token, it's unacceptable to keep reusing the same panel of bias and getting absolute garbage from them. There are times where having warm participants is a good thing. So in this particular example, I'd been through the onboarding journey with them previously. And this 3rd time, I was actually doing some admin role stuff, like member user management stuff. So having them pre-warmed up already gave them the context to the stuff that I wanted them to do. I was also doing a user testing type thing where I'm evaluating a journey in a prototype. It's behavioral, very behavioral, and in which case it's mechanical. You know, can they do it? This is where that it depends comes around so much. Yeah, it's just make sure you're doing it with caution and with making sure you're aware of the potential pitfalls. If you have to do that, sometimes it's a better idea to get another user researcher to test with those people rather than you. Because again, there's experimenter effect and stuff going on. Yes, you might have rapport and all kinds of other things, but if you're concerned, as relating to the previous question, getting somebody else to test this thing can provide a different perspective, because we're all slightly different in the way we do things, some very different. And if you want to get a bit more color, a bit of resolution, a bit more understanding, that's really not a bad thing to do. It's also a luxury position not everyone has. So I hope that answered your question.
Thanks. Darren, something to add?
I'll need to see the question again because I can't see it. I actually opened up a separate window because it comes through perfectly on YouTube, but in our window, I can't see it.
Yeah, it's a little bit cut off, and I'll read it out again.
Okay.
What's your take on reusing past participants for other projects when finding niche participants willing to do research is so hard because of their schedule, etc.?
Well, part of my response is what I was hearing Dr. Nick say about using biased folks. I mean, I'm personally big on having a repository of people that you can draw from to test periodically. But in order to eliminate having reusing the same people, especially when it's not necessary, it's good to, how about just make that repository of people you can pull from, that bank of participants, very large. So sometimes you're going to have to use the same people in certain cases, but you want to have as many new people, as many fresh participants as you possibly can. But it's something that's just going to happen in certain circles. So it's not a deal breaker by any means, but we just want to stretch it as much as possible.
Yeah, and go ahead, Nick.
Sorry, Deb, you go. I'll tag on the end.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I know that this is tough, and maybe go back to the show we did with Sotiris, who talked about how to grow your own pool. So it might be good for you to invest some time to try to grow that pool more so that you're not leaning on the same people over and over. I think, I don't know if you can go to outside panels and find strangers who fit into the target audience and pay them appropriately. Sometimes if these are very specialized people, they expect $200 for an hour or $300. It can be expensive, but at least it'll be fresh people. If you are doing usability testing of a concept or prototype and these people saw it before and now they're seeing the new iteration of it, I would think that is just too flawed to run again with the same people because they've already seen it. Now they've got a familiarity with it, and I would be concerned that that's too biased. From a comedy perspective, I will just tell a quick comedy story and then dump it back over to Nick. For a few projects that I've done in the last few years, we've ended up on user interviews as a panel service. We don't love user interviews, so it's certainly not sponsored, but it's a place where I've gotten some people. And something very funny happened this year, which was I was part of a study in early this year, which was a diary study that had to do with people using a certain phone app. And then I had another study, which I've talked about here before, which had to do with the custom promotional products e-commerce site. And I pulled up, I'm on Zoom. The participant joins the promotional products thing. He turns on his video, and it's a guy I had in the other study. And, user interviews claims to have 300,000 people, yet somehow both times this guy was screened into these two completely different studies. And the funny thing is, he really put his heart into both studies, and he was a great participant in both, and he just happened to be a relevant user for both, and I guess does a lot of user interviews, studies for the side money. But it was the funniest thing when he came up on the thing, and I'm like, "You again?" And he's like, "Where do I know you from?" And I'm like, "Because I talked to you about a diary study with a phone app." And he's like, "Oh God, that thing." So, slight comedy example here. I ran into the same guy from user interviews twice. What are the odds? So I think in your case, Sebastian, you probably he says, in my context, it's more about generative research than about understanding the status of a particular situation, activity, task, or so this is generative research. Yeah, I don't know how many times you can interview the same person for generative research. And I know in some of the research that my apprentices did last year about researchers, we learned that some companies will mark in their database the last time they spoke to someone, and they will put like a 6-month moratorium on speaking to that person again. So you might have to come
Yeah.
up with a
Yeah.
policy that says, look, in some cases we'll meet people again or reuse them. I hate to say that, but but it won't be more than once every 6 months. But again, that's if you have that luxury and you have at least a few more people. Nick, something to add to that?
Yeah, it also depends on the research question, all kinds of stuff. What I wanted to say was panels, in my experience, are a really bad thing. I've tried them a few times. I was at Virgin Media in 2015. They had a panel there that was facilitated by an external market research company, and it was basically a groupthink committee nightmare, really bad. When you're looking at commercial participant pools, like Debbie's mentioned, you've probably heard me say this before. They're always very biased, particularly biased, and it's not a showstopper. You can work with the bias, but you have to be aware of that bias. Especially in Debbie's case, that's very typical, where people are what I call professional guinea pigs. They're professional user testers. You got to be very, very, very careful. Case in point, I'm not going to name the company. I was talking to a company 2 weeks ago. They showed me a new user journey, a new function. It was really poor. I couldn't get any of my team to use it. It was, let alone anybody else. It was really bad. I spoke to the product manager, who said it had been thoroughly user tested. And I said, that can't be the case. Turns out that they used a participant pool. And so they got a false validation. They got lots of people being paid money to go, yeah, I love it. It's great. It isn't about whether you like it or not. It's, can you do it? Does it meet your
Right.
needs? I don't care about what your opinion is, and I'm not paying you for your opinion.
Well, it also
This is
sounds
where
like
market
bad
research.
questions and bad recruiting, because even these people who we got from panels didn't say that shit to us at all. We did not get yes men and women and others. We didn't get that. So I think that while sometimes the quality from panels and pools can be bad, I think it also depends on the questions you're asking and the people you've selected. We were really picky and we got great people.
It's also worth mentioning that the subject matter experts are a kind of a different beast. And if you've got a subject matter expert who just deeply knows their area and it's really technical knowledge, then I go back to people like that all day and all night, because I'm asking very factual questions. And that's just good stuff. I'm just trying to understand a legal area, a procurement area, a medical area, whatever the gig is. And there are people who I'm obviously not, who know a lot better than me. So it depends on the research question.
All right, let's take a look at what might be our last question of the day, which came earlier from the mysterious person known as R for Everything. And R for Everything said, it got cut off, I'll read it. Oh, no, then we have a Kayleen question, and then that's it. Let's see, this was, as a researcher, what do you recommend for physical shop visits to discover people's journey and issues? We have online services and physical shops. That's what that says, but it got cut off. Nick, physical shops, what do you think?
I love physical shops. I love this stuff. Secret Shopper is the way to start, for sure. Be a customer. Just go in there, do the thing. I love hanging out in shops. It depends on the size of the shop. You can't look too weird or blah, blah, blah. But hanging out, doing the ethnography style thing, where you are fly on the wall, you're just another bod in the environment with your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut. You are there to absorb. Over time, this might mean you're in there all day, from the minute the doors open till the minute the doors close, so that you can see a full, and do that every day for a few weeks, or you need to get a feel for the flow, for the behavior of the shop itself and the people that inhabit it, if you know what I mean. You'll hear raised voices at checkouts as young mum is struggling with two children to juggle potatoes and the kid's trying to eat a lollipop off the side. You know what I mean? Those sorts of things. The footfall issues, the ambient noise. There's so much to learn. I love that kind of work. I'm deadly jealous that you've got a gig doing that. That's my favorite kind of work. You're looking out, as with all user research, for user needs and pain points. The pain points can make themselves known to you with elevated voices or frustration or that sort of stuff. The user needs are also super interesting. We can get to dark patterns and making people walk the wrong way around the store so that they consume more, all of that another time. But yeah, I think spending a period of time just looking and listening is ultimate value. And then you generate hypotheses in your head and then start to speak to the store manager, the checkout clerk, the backroom staff, you know what I mean? Everybody involved, all the players in the thing to ask more about your hypotheses or research questions. That's how I typically do stuff.
Darren?
Not much to contribute for me on this one. I've never had the privilege of doing something like that. I do believe that UX skills are pervasive, that they can be used from digital to physical in those environments. I love the ethnographic approach, being able to sit and study. The big challenge for a lot of people is being quiet to just watch, observe, and make your notes and things of that nature. But it's a great opportunity for people who have that opportunity. Happy for you. And it's got to be a great experience. Going to have a lot of fantastic takeaways. And I'll leave it at that. I think Dr. Nick said a lot enough for you on this one. So
get lots of evidence for your portfolio. Take lots of pictures, maps, footfall, sexy stuff. This is amazing portfolio fodder because it's sexy.
Okay. Yeah. On that note, we've got Kayleen's question, which I think will be our last for today. And I don't have it ready to put up on the screen, so I'm just going to read it to you. And it's because it's short. It said, "Are Glassdoor's UX salaries accurate? They seemed ridiculously high to me."
I think we need to defer to Amy Santi on this one, don't we all?
Amy, that's true. Amy is working on a spreadsheet or some sort of study on salaries. I have an opinion on this, but before I say anything, guys, do you have an opinion on Glassdoor's accuracy?
Sure.
Given that most jobs don't even tell you salary. Sorry, Darren. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Can we expand? Can we expand beyond salary? I think we got a little bit of time. Glassdoor, Indeed, LinkedIn. Sadly, all of these job resources, you got to take them with a grain of salt across the board. Whether it's salary, very few job descriptions are written properly. Now we just found, I don't know if anybody saw the article that came out about 2 weeks ago. A lot of job postings are actually people trying to get your personal information so they can steal your identities. There's no real job. So now you got to look out for that. That wasn't a thing before.
Oh.
Kayleen.
Thank you, Kayleen.
So
very sweet.
We've got poorly written job descriptions. We've got companies that don't really want to hire a UX person, even though they say they do. You've got people who are just trying to get your information so they can steal your identity.
Let's remember the people who have the design challenges and no job because they want to steal your ideas.
Yes. I've had that happen before. That's why I put a password on my portfolio, because people steal it. You're liable to go somewhere and have somebody come in for an interview and they bring your stuff in. It's just really sad. About the salary specifically, I've seen it run the gamut. I've seen UX jobs posted for as little as $30K a year, American. 30 USD American. I've seen, depending upon what the job is, I've seen UX related jobs using management director roles all the way up to 210, 220K annually. And those were actually legitimate jobs. So the Glassdoor is just, I mean, the reviews are goofy. A lot of the people that you need to hear from don't post reviews. A lot of the people you don't need to hear from do. That's back to the age of misinformation that we're in. So it's almost like Glassdoor and the other sources Glassdoor in particular becomes more of a social media styled job resource because of what people are doing and saying out there. And you've got to really take what you hear again with a grain of salt. I took a job once because I thought the information on Glassdoor was so helpful. And I thought that Glassdoor, this is the gospel of yeah, I did say that once. It's just sad. It's just sad. The things that I almost forgot what I was going to say when I saw that because I'm looking at the chat now too. But I thought that Glassdoor was the cat's meow. I thought that Glassdoor, this is, if I want information about a job, this is it. I actually found out about another place that nobody knows about. I'll have to share it later. I can't remember. I think it's called Testimonials. I can't remember the name of it. They have information about jobs nobody knows because it's not a high profile resource, but there are people posting their comments about these companies that you don't necessarily see on Glassdoor. So maybe you need to go and get them from multiple places. And Indeed, you don't see anything at all on Indeed. I just don't like the way Indeed operates. But I took a job once because of what was said on Glassdoor, and I was ready to get out of there after 2-3 weeks. It had a really hot company, had a really high rating, and it was garbage. That's the company that some of you heard me talk about. They hid people from me during the interview process because they knew if I met those people during the interview process, I wouldn't take the job. But they had a 4.5, 5-star rating on Glassdoor. And it was an absolute joke. Absolute joke. So take Glassdoor with a grain of salt. Cross the board.
And I think
don't pay attention to the salaries.
Yeah, and I think that for me, my impression of Glassdoor is that it's I forgot the word for this. Somebody will know this. It's the bias of the people who chose to fill it out. You know, I've never put my salary on Glassdoor, but there's a bias for, I forgot what it's called, but it's a bias of the people who chose to fill it out versus the people who didn't bother filling it out. And what I found whenever I search Glassdoor on and just say UX jobs USA, I end up with San Francisco salaries. So I don't think that Glassdoor is a really good snapshot of what's happening outside of some of the biggest cities in the US. I think these are things you could get paid as, a senior or whatever in San Francisco, LA, Chicago, New York, Austin, Texas, some of these real centers of UX. But if you look at some of the more secondary cities doing UX, Denver, probably Atlanta, where Kayleen is, Charlotte, North Carolina, probably Detroit, where Darren is. Maybe that's a tertiary city, no offense. But I would say that, what people make in San Francisco and New York, you're not going to make in Atlanta. You're not going to make in Charlotte, North Carolina. I see this both in the annual salaries and in the hourly rates for contracting. The numbers that I can get in San Francisco and New York when people talk to me about freelancing and contracting, the numbers for your Charlotte, North Carolina jobs are sometimes 3/4 of that, 2/3 of that. Same job, different city. Different city, different cost of living, different economics. So I would say, you can't get too wrapped up in Glassdoor. I tell people to focus, don't focus on what will the market bear as much as a little bit of what are you worth, and then also look at what the market will bear. I've had to lower my rate in some cases, not only because rates are going down thanks to the flood of people on the market, but even moving to Europe. People in Europe are paid less than I was being paid in San Francisco. So, in some cases, a job is that pays really well here is lower than I'm used to from living in San Francisco. But then again, so is the cost of living. What I paid for rent and food and petrol and insurance and other things in San Francisco is off the charts. And so the salaries are up there with them. And even still, nobody can save. They're living in their cars. Kayleen says, according to Glassdoor, UX researchers in Atlanta make an average of $147,000. And I was like, is that even real? Or am I going to see a different number?
That's not real.
That would have to be like a lead or principal, in my opinion, that would be a lead or principal researcher with 7 or more years of experience at a very mature tech company that has that kind of money. That is not going to be a startup. That is not going to be a smaller company. That's going to be a salary for someone with 7+ years, maybe even a manager salary. Someone said that number to me recently, and I think that was a UX manager salary for like Charlotte, North Carolina. That's what a manager might make. So I don't think that's going to be your average research salary. Ralitza says the website I sent has a breakdown of years of experience, city, and geographic region. Yeah, YouTube sometimes kills links because they assume you're a spammer. So what was that? What was the website you sent, Ralitza? Can you tell me in Slack or just write it here as words like something.com? Because YouTube is probably going to suppress it on the assumption you're a spammer. Kayleen says, I was very surprised that Glassdoor, which is supposed to be reputable, would have such a ridiculous estimate. But I think they get that from people who come and fill out these things and come and fill out these, what would you say, like ratings. I don't think Glassdoor makes it up. Oh, Darren says comparably.com. I'll put that up on the screen. I don't know this, so hashtag not sponsored, but this is what I guess Ralitza recommended. Comparably.com. Nick, what do you want to say?
So when you're in your job, in your permanent job or in your job, do happy people, do contented job people just think, oh, today I'm going to go to Glassdoor and just enthuse about how great this place is? No. Right? When you're pissed off and you've left the company, do you go back and say, fuck those guys and stick the boot in? Yes. So that's, sorry, my language, I'm sorry.
That's
but
the bias, that sometimes people fill it out only when they're mad.
Exactamundo. So there's that. Number 2, as I'm seeing maybe here in the UK, I suspect in Europe and America, people are accepting salaries in lieu of a title. Right? So we get people like, oh, I'm head of UX, but I'm earning 30, 40 grand a year. It's like, and then they go to conference, I'm head of UX, a big brand, but, they're earning absolutely nished. That does not compute. Sorry.
Yeah, I've seen some of that too. The title and pay mismatch stuff, and that's without us even starting to talk about ridiculous job titles like head of UX for someone in their 2nd or 3rd year of UX. But anyway, we're just about out of time. Thanks to both of you. Note we're going to change. Reminder, everybody, the schedule for the show for the next 2 months is super up in the air because I'm trying to prioritize my new contract job. So I apologize that shows are going to be canceled here and there. Shows are going to be rescheduled to days you're not expecting them. So please check deltacx.link/events. If you are in our Slack channel, which is totally free, deltacx.link/join Slack, we have a channel inside the Slack. Look into that just in case. Darren, give us your closing words and where we can find you.
Okay, closing words. Well, man, you know where to find me. LinkedIn, UX Chit Chat Hour last Thursday of every month on Air Meet. We're still enjoying those quite a bit. The podcast, The World of UX. Actually, my new episode just came out today, and I interviewed Stephanie Voltaire.
Yay, Stephanie.
That episode came out today. We're having a ball with those interviews. It's hard to stop. We ended up going for an hour. We thought it was going to be a half hour. So same old places. You can always find me everywhere. People reaching out to me all the time. Going to be looking for additional people to have on the show. So I'll probably tap into this crowd of people I see in the chat here, and gotta have Debbie on the show. It's time for Debbie to be on
I was going to
somebody
say,
else's show. So.
bitch, you're the gatekeeper. No, I'm kidding.
And Dr. Nick. I got to have both of them on. I just got to remember you guys are 6 hours ahead of me, so we might end up doing it on a Saturday if that's convenient for you. But,
thank you.
Lots of great things going on. Pressing forward, almost about to enter my dissertation, so happy about that.
Hey, good luck. Cool.
Yep.
And let's see. And I'm going to be rescheduling our next thing for November 12 instead of November 5, just shifting this to that Friday. And you guys will get the calendar invite momentarily, just updating the calendar. So, Dr. Nick, where can people find and follow you?
Same as Darren. I'm a LinkedIn dweller. That's where I can be found. I'm not on there a lot at the moment. I try to get on there. My current gig is crazy. Or just, to keep me busy, should we say. Yeah, that's it from me. I'd love it if we could have a Christmas December one that fits into your new timetable. Have a kind of a Christmas Three Musketeers special, maybe.
Yeah, let's take a look at that. Let me see, because I'm going to have to move that one as well because I'm actually on vacation. Yeah, I'm going to be road tripping around the world. No, let me see. Oh no, I think that's supposed to be Tuesday the 14th. So if you'd like it closer to Christmas, when do you want the Christmas special, Nick?
Whenever it fits into kind of Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, all the seasonal, I don't care. Basically, sometime within the Christmas season. I just thought it'd be a nice, fun thing to do.
Yeah, we'll definitely have one. I will message both of you guys. We're getting lots of here comes Christmas icons from iTunes. Thank you. So I will message you guys about moving that around. And thanks to everybody for joining in. It was a super fun night. Thanks for all the great questions. And I guess we will, let me see, because I've got to reschedule stuff. Tomorrow is our Slack monthly networking. So on the Slack channel in live events, you'll see how to join. If things are crazy at my new job and I can't be there, the networking still happens. So don't go there for me, go there for each other. And then Friday will still be reaction stream. So if nothing else, I'll see everybody on Friday. Thanks again, and see everybody in Slack. Thanks. Bye. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are